All right, what's up, everybody? I'm joined here by Yona again. Um, you just got your channel taken down too recently, right?
Yeah, my 18-year-old YouTube channel. They got me.
What was the reasoning for it?
It was actually for three copyright strikes. There was the first one was for a song that I'd made with Glory Jones. Shout out Glory Jones, and it was about
Glory.
bauxite alumina. It was about the bauxite mining industry in Jamaica, and my video included footage showing the dirty effects of this bauxite mining industry in Jamaica, just outside of the capital city of Kingston, in fact. And they didn't like that. And then another one was taken down where I did a song in Portuguese called Chega that featured Lula da Silva. Of course, everyone knows Lula. Um, and I love singing that song.
Yeah.
Deixi seu carro sujo brilhante no lava jato. That one I got took down because I used drone footage of the favelas, which are like barrios, but in Brazil. And then um, the last one again was for drone footage, and I believe it was on. It was actually one of my songs I sang in English called Apex, Boots Off Again, featuring drone footage of my home city here, Huntington, in West Virginia.
Hmm. But I don't understand what the copyright was. Like it sounds like because from what I know, like your songs are original.
Right.
So
Original lyrics,
it seems like they're grasping at straws to try
yeah.
to just get
You would
you
think
off.
it's fair use. You would think that
Yeah.
there's fair use, but you would be mistaken, my friend. YouTube is, dare I say, whole ass. These are my own opinions. Anyway.
Yeah, and you talk about great topics on your channel too, about nukes and peace, and I had you on to talk about Deaths by Despair, and you talk about that on
Particularly
your
among
channel
the
as
youth.
well.
Yeah, I don't think, the fact that I go through a lot of sourced material and, my whole catchphrase is get fact up and I'm all about facts. It seems that those particular outlets in our sphere of all, I would rather say alternative media than independent because labels are a touchy thing these days. And
Yeah,
so many cults. But I would just say alternative to the mainstream. There are so many different outlets where people are able to get news and information now. And I find that content creators who regularly are actually impartial or list their sources and the whatnot are particularly targeted and
the
depressed
most.
and
Yeah,
monetized the most. I mean, I look at what they did to James Corbett long ago and banning
James Corbett and Ryan Christian of the Last
right,
American
and then of course
Vagabond.
Ryan Christian the same. Even
Yeah,
Del Bigtree and the folks at the Highwire, they take the same journalistic standard when it comes to actually listing all of the different publications, clinical studies, and the whatnot, peer-reviewed studies that they may cover in their show. You go the following Monday and you check your email box, and there's an email with all of their lists, which then I can go to nih.gov or wherever and read it for myself. I can read in many languages, as you know, Franco, and so
yeah.
I read it for myself. I get tired of the infantilization and being talked down to, this paternalism taken on by a lot of politicians, knowing how crooked and corrupt they are. But on to the main entree for today.
Yeah, Thanksgiving. I mean, I thought it would be good to have you on to get a Native American's perspective on this and to talk about the history of Thanksgiving. And you were mentioning to me earlier that Thanksgiving is a practice that Native Americans do, a spiritual practice,
Every
pretty
day.
much every day when they pray, right? So I guess that's something that
That's where I
people
wanted to
from the
start.
West took. Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Wow, yeah, boy, you nailed it right on the head. You literally went right where I planned to begin because I feel it's most appropriate to think of this that, you know, particularly with the colonists who encountered these different bands of the Wampanoag Nation, you know, the Patuxents, um, and the other related tribes there, Pequots, are will be mentioned later. But there's a number of nations that were within the Wampanoag Confederation, which was a number of different tribes, just like the Iroquois Confederation, just like the Creek Confederation. And when it came to their practice, which is our practice the same, um, you know, my father was Catholic, so you know, having gone through the Catholic faith and even studied at St. Meinrad Seminary in Indiana my freshman year of college, you know, I've always been able to make the comparison between our two spiritual paths. And most different is how we pray and what we pray for. Because, like, for example, during a normal Catholic Mass, besides all the stand, sit, kneel, sit, stand, and lining up for the blood of Christ and the body of Christ, you know, with the wine and the Eucharist wafer.
Yeah.
Um, there's always a part during the regular Sunday Mass and holy days when they'll do prayer requests and, oh Lord, can you do this, this, and this, and start listing off things to pray
Yeah.
for. And that's just unconscionable in the Katua way, the Cherokee way, and it's just completely alien to the approach taken by um, the Algonquin tribes, including Squanto's tribe and Pocahontas's tribe, as well as our Creek tribes and the Iroquois tribes. Just generally speaking, all we ever do is give thanks. And most of our prayers they always begin with thanking the water, thanking the sun, and then literally thanking everything that has lived, that is living, and that will live after we're gone. It's just going through long lists of thanksgiving. Thanks for giving us this. Thanks for giving us that. Our word in Cherokee for God Himself, herself, itself, don't know which pronoun to apply there. I'm not so presumptuous. And we use the term great provider or giver of all things. And so, literally, every address to God, we're saying thanks to the giver. And literally, every time we
Hmm.
say God in Cherokee, Une Sanahi, literally, thanks to the giver. So, I mean, yeah, it's so central and core to our being and every thought about God and our connection to all living things and being so grateful that everything is with us and seeing our part in that. So that being said, um, every meal that we have has always been to share with all because in Native American culture, um, the idea of there was a valuation system for valuing things in trade, and that was the buckskin. So this will be worth $2. That's going to
Hmm.
cost you $5. This may be worth $10. That may be worth $15. That's always been our economy, the Cherokee buckskin trade. The ironic thing is, it's now the year 2022, and people still all across the United States and the world will refer to the United States dollar as bucks. If you say I only have 100
Hmm.
US dollars in my wallet, that's the same as saying I have 100 bucks. That's where that comes from. Trading in buckskins and animal skins, furs,
I had
pelts.
no idea. Wow.
Um, and still to this day, people say I got some. You know, I only got $5 on it. Well, you're referring to buckskins because we used to trade with buckskin, and that's how you would trade things. But we always realized many things cannot be measured in buckskin intrinsic value, right? You can't put a value on human life. At least we don't believe so. And so that leads us to the story of today. And it's really a twofold story. On the one hand, food was freely shared with who's ever in camp. And each and every nation that I'm aware of had a means of naturalization for immigrants, to use today's terminology. So, for example, the Cherokee have 7 clans. One of our clans, the Twister clan, Aniglohi, if you're not born into the village and you're not of the Cherokee, you could be Seminole, you could be Irish, you could be Catalan. Who knows? you can become full-blooded Cherokee. And that was the term. Now you're full-blooded Cherokee, even though you may not have a drop of Cherokee blood because you've gone through the naturalization process of being accepted as a full citizen of the Cherokee Nation. That's one thing that's never discussed about is the fact that it's not that the tribes didn't know these were immigrants. Oh, there very much was an immigration process. There very much was a process for strangers to come into the land, be given their own place to live, and to be accepted as part of the community. So, with that in mind, Squanto and the story of Thanksgiving that most all Americans are taught in school is kind of a combination of two different feasts. It's kind of a combination of two different stories that have become the legend that we're familiar with, Franco. And that's the story of Pocahontas and the Jamestown colony, and the story of the Pilgrims aboard the Mayflower and their colony at Plymouth with Squanto, right? One involves Squanto, the other one involves Pocahontas. And interestingly enough, I cannot confirm it, nor can I deny it, but in all likelihood, we do know for a fact that Pocahontas and Squanto were both in the city of London, England, at the same time, overlapped by 4 days. And it's and literally 4 houses apart on the same street. So
Wow.
it's suggested by many historians that on one of these nights when they were showing off their Indians, that Squanto and Pocahontas in fact met each other and spoke to each other in English. Because,
Hmm.
of course, she would have spoken Powhatan or Paspahegh, and he would have spoken Wampanoag. But they were able to speak to each other because at that point they both spoke English. And so, really, the success of the Jamestown colony launched from London, England, by the London Company, and the success of the Pilgrims colony launched from Bristol, aka the Bristol Company. That's the first two English settlements. The London Company, which founded Virginia, they named Janacomaca, and they renamed it Virginia in honor of Queen Elizabeth, who had just died, the Virgin Queen. And they founded their Jamestown colony in 1607. And then you have just a few years later in 1620, the Mayflower arrives off of Cape Cod, and they found their colony of Plymouth. And to speed up things, basically, Americans are taught that Squanto had hunters bring and prepare a great feast for the pilgrims, and they all celebrated brotherhood and had a great feast. And in fact, if you go to, I think it's called Of Pilgrim's Progress, which is basically the written account of the Plymouth colony by the leader himself, William Bradford, he does describe a first celebratory feast when the Wampanoag hunters brought forth deer and turkey and cranberries, and they literally had a feast of sorts. And of course, in school, we're also taught about Squanto. So, take a little break here. You got any questions? Any?
Yeah, there was a lot there to unpack, but some stuff that came to mind when you were talking about the giving of thanks, like that's a mindful practice and a conscious practice. And I think what people try to do when they pray, like the European Catholics, when they give a list of things that they want to ask for, I think that's a type of they're trying to manifest things.
Mhm.
Like it's like and you can manifest things through thought vibrations, but like that's a whole other discussion on spirituality. But they they do it in a way where they ask and then they think that you just have to sit back and then it'll come to them. But what would give them more peace is rather than always wanting things and asking for things is to be grateful for things that you already have.
Precisely.
Yeah. So you wanna piggyback on any of that?
Well, it really is just a matter of perspective because for
Yeah.
us, it is considered presumptuous at best and rude at worst to make demands of the
Right.
creator of all things, to make demands of the provider as if enough had not already been provided and done
Mm,
for us. So it's just a different way of looking at things.
yeah.
Particularly, I find I would characterize Katua or the Cherokee Way as a spiritual path and a philosophy, not so much like an organized religion or anything. I mean, there's not Cherokee missionaries that go door to door trying to see
Right.
hearts or anything. It's just mainly a full. I mean, in our own language of Jalagi Gamonihiste or Cherokee, we call ourselves Aniyanwayani. And, Yanwayani just means people of principle, people
Yeah.
of logic, and that, because we've had a written language for over 3,000 years, all of our Katua practice is based upon logic and principle, much like if you're reading Plutarch or Plato or Aristotle, just breaking things down in a very basic and logical fashion. Um, all the difference being the Greeks and Romans are way into this deities, multiple deities. The Greeks and
Mm-hmm.
the Romans have all these different. God, well, in fact, the Romans just copied the Greeks when it came to gods and goddesses and such, whether it's Zeus or Apollo or Poseidon or Neptune and whatnot. And for us, it's just there's the creator God, and then there's grandmother corn, and there's other sisters. But for us, the supernatural things are like plants and animals,
Mm-hmm.
not like different God people. So I mean, everybody has their own thing. I'm just dumbstruck from the linguistic point of view that hmm, I guess it would be Buddhism that's closest to Katua
And would
because
you
it
also
really is
say
about
Taoism?
accepting. Yeah, like your
That's
first
like a
rule is life is suffering.
yeah.
Get over it and try and stay in balance and harmony. It's much more laid back that way, I think.
Yeah, so it's like Eastern philosophies, like
Yes, yes.
Confucianism and Taoism and Buddhism. Um, yeah, it's not. Is it like worshiping of a god or no?
Well, the essence of Katua is what Crossland Smith, our great living elder today, would call adagesti. The Greeks would call agape love, but it's basically a love with no ulterior motive,
Mm,
with no agenda. When you love purely from the heart and soul, with no expectation of acceptance of that love or reward for that love, loving for the sake of loving itself. And adagesti is literally realizing that we are all bound, breathing the same air, sharing the same minerals on
right.
this one earth, and seeing that we're literally sharing life itself and sharing love itself at all time. It's basically the one love, a dog,
Yeah.
the. And so for us to get in that place is to be one with all life, past, present, and future. Because for us, it's not. I mean, yeah, you're born and you die, and I'm not speaking toward reincarnation per se, but for us, your song, your warrior song is forever. Your
Mm,
spirit is forever. It was before you were born. It's after you're born. And it's not like you're taking different forms. It's your spirit. So that's just our way of looking at things. And
gotcha.
so
Gotcha.
it's interesting how much of Native American customs have been melted, amalgamated as you were, into what's referred to by scholars as the great American melting pot of cultures. And so, there's a lot of things even today that are still done that are rather Native American. For example, in the Caribbean language of Taino, babacoa means to cook on rocks. Babacoa. Well, when Cristobal Colon, aka Christopher Columbus, met the first chief he would ever encounter of the Taino, Wakanagari. Wakanagari taught him a few words that day, like a hammock, HAMAQ, hammock, which is a
Hmm.
bed made out of rope strung between two trees. Hammock. That's their language, their word. He asked him, "What are you smoking?" And he points to the pipe and says, "Tobacco, tobacco," which is their word for pipe. Well, they
Right.
took tobacco to mean tobacco.
The
Tobacco. Oh, it's
the
tobacco.
plant.
Tobacco is
Yeah.
their word for pipe, not what was in the pipe. And then, of course, babacoa, because they put rocks on the fire to get the rocks hot, and then they cook the meat on the rocks. Babacoa, or what we call barbecue.
Crazy.
First three words that Columbus learned from the American tribes. And
It's like that in Spanish too with some words. Like they
uh-huh.
still like in Peru, I know they still use like some of the words that the natives there would use.
Yeah, like for animals in particular, like and even like popcorn. Like normally, like in Mexico, they would call popcorn palomitas, right? Maíz, palomitas. But in Ecuador, where I was at, Tiwantisuyo in the old Incan Empire, they called it canguil, Canguil, canguil. Because a lot of where I was at in Cuenca, there was a it was mainly mixed with Quichua, which is their northern form of Quechua, the Incan language,
Yeah.
and so or same thing in Mexico, like Mapache, which is a raccoon, right? Mapache, or their word for a possum, zarigüeya, zarigüeya. That those are not Spanish terms; those are from uh, local indigenous languages, Mapache and Zarigüeya, for example. Just like I'm just backing up where you're saying that. Yeah,
Yeah. Like you can tell with some of the words. Like in Peru, I remember we would eat like the heart of cattle, and they would call that anticucho. Like that.
yeah,
That doesn't sound Spanish, but that definitely sounds like it would be Quechua.
yeah. That's Quechua.
Thomas Oklahoma out here puts happy thanks taking. Lol.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about what actually happened on that
Well, that
day. And
Thomas really cuts to how the first Thanksgiving officially came about,
uh
and what a great segue into that, because it really was the first official declaration of Thanksgiving was literally a thanks taking, and so without further ado, the story of Squanto begins. So the Pilgrims would land at around 1620, officially representing the Bristol Land Company of England, the Bristol Company. Two companies, London Company, Bristol Company. We'll go back to Jamestown and the London Company later, but this is Squanto's moment. So I think it was, to the best of my knowledge, about 8 years prior. So we're talking around maybe 1611, 1612. Squanto was out fishing and oystering on the shoreline there near his hometown of Patuxent, that they would rename Plymouth, when he was picked up by English sailors and slavers who would capture Indians and take them back to Europe as slaves in fetters. And that's how uh, Tisquantum made his way to Cadiz in Spain, where he was sold as a slave and bought by a friar of I think he was a Cistercian monk. The Catholic order doesn't matter. Anyways, a Catholic monk, a brother with funky hairdo, uh, buys Tisquantum and teaches him proper Castellano, Espanol, Spanish. And he ends up working on the ships as a deckhand and finally makes his way back to England, hearing the English knowing that's his ticket to get back home. And it's in 1617, when in London, England, that Pocahontas is brought from the Jamestown colony to London, England, by her now husband, John Rolfe, and she's pregnant with child. She would end up, unfortunately, getting sick and taking ill and dying in England. But it's very likely for the 4 days that Squanto and Pocahontas were staying in homes on the same street, just 4 doors down, that they actually met and spoke to each other in English. We don't know. I would love to see a recreation of that in the movie. But anyhow, moving on. Squanto makes it back home aboard an English ship on his second attempt, and is actually offloaded near present-day Newport, Rhode Island, walks all the way home, literally gets home and finds that his entire village is empty, recently vacated. And within 2 days of being in his village, picking up things, straightening up, fixing up his own place, the Mayflower arrives. And what dumb luck that the Bristol Company happens to land their maiden ship, the Mayflower, on the shores of what the Wampanoag called Massachusetts, or what we would now call Massachusetts, which in their language, Masha, land, Achu, hill, sorry, bless you, Massachusetts, the place of the hill land, the hilly land place, Massachusetts. Not to be confused with Mashawamuck, which was the saltwater island that the second colony in Massachusetts would found, that they renamed Boston. Anyhow, back to Squanto. Squanto greets them. He's literally the only Wampanoag in all of America, I assure you, that was fluent in the English language. And so he was immediately able to be an intercessor, translator, if you will, to speak on behalf of William Bradford and the Brownists, the Pilgrims, between them and the local chiefs, Chief Philip, Chief Metacomet, the other Sachems, what they call themselves in their Algonquin language. And that's how it began, for them. Much the same way that John Smith was able to build a dictionary of Powhatan terms going back and forth with Pocahontas and her uncle, Opechancanough, brother to Chief Powhatan, who spoke Spanish, and most sailors in those days spoke a good deal of Spanish because Spain was the main game for crossing the pond, as it were. And that led to success for the Jamestown colony and for the Plymouth colony. So now we're 1622, 1623. Fast forward to 1636. And there is a colonist in the Boston colony who is preying upon young children. We would call him a pedophile. And he is banished from the colony by the Boston English-speaking colonists. They put him on a boat and roll him out to Block Island. And Block Island, offshore, occupied by several Pequot villages. Well, banishing this pedophile to Block Island, he then went about preying upon little Pequot boys and girls and was discovered and was punished according to the Pequot tradition, where they, like Lorena Bobbitt did to her husband, they severed his penis and castrated him and then rowed him back to shore. They didn't kill him, but they did what they do to. That was their punishment. They row him back to shore, dump him back off. He then straggles back to civilization and says, "Oh my God, look what the Indians have done to me, torturing me." Well, they were outraged. Even though they just got done ostracizing him. Never mind. They're outraged. So Miles Standish forms a posse of about 300, and they go march on the main Pequot town that's on shore, which is on the River Mystic. And this city is a palisaded city, meaning they've taken trunks and sharpened the top to make like spear tips and lashed them side by side to make a wall all the way around to protect it, right? And according to because Miles Standish, the leader of the colonists, was a silversmith like Paul Revere would be later on in Boston, and he made an engraving of his heroics where they set the village wall on fire. And then, as pregnant women and elderly came running out of it, because most of the men were actually out, it was during the middle of the day. Most of the men were out either hunting or fishing. And so, really, most of the people inside the village were people that can't really hunt or fish or plow the fields and stuff. And so, they were, so on his engraving, he shows him running his sword through the belly of a pregnant Pequot woman. And so when Miles Standish and his successful party returned to Boston, John Winthrop the Elder, who's governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, this is in October of 1637, then declares for the first time an official day of thanksgiving to God for exterminating the devilish savages from our midst and opening up this land to our sacred habitation.
Wow.
Thanks for taking that, and let's celebrate genocide. We had to genocide those people because they retaliated against the pedophile that we just banished from our colony. Anyways, details. And so, I don't know. I was joking with a friend earlier, like, when it comes to the actual American Thanksgiving in Massachusetts, should you thank a pedophile for the official Thanksgiving, the first one? Because he's kind of involved. If it hadn't been for the pedophile going to Block Island and then getting castrated, then I'm sure they would have found some other reason to go burn Pequot. So I'm still not going to give credit to the pedo in that story. But nonetheless, it's just disgusting. It's just disgusting, particularly to say that you're glorifying God and the creator of peace. Thanks God for genocide, and God's like, hey, don't put that on me. It's just disgusting. It's
so it was like
October, not November, which that's another thing. Yeah,
like
sorry.
during those the anniversary of that, like the first anniversaries of that day, would they teach their people like what actually happened? And they're like, this is what, we genocided people and we're giving thanks to that. Like, now we have this land. As at a certain point, they became conscious about how, okay, this is like, this is a horrible thing to be celebrating, but we want to keep the tradition going. Let's whitewash this. So was it, is that how it went?
That's what they did, literally, because at the present moment when it happened, it was framed in terms of good and evil, and that we're literally angels of the Lord that have stepped foot upon this land, blessed by the Vatican, on a mission from God. And these devilish, red-deviled savages, literally the spawn of Satan, have now been cleared aside so that us godly folks can now be caretakers to this land.
Jeez.
And so it's viewed in terms of good and evil. And, we're godly people, and these are red devils or blue devils or whatever. Even to this day, all across the United States, there's a number of teams that still have as their mascot red devil or blue devil or devil of some type. And it refers to us.
Oh, wow. I thought it was just like actual like demons that they had like as a mascot or a devil.
For example, the Tuscarora would paint their bodies with blue clay.
Oh, so that's where Blue Devil comes from.
North Carolina, they had to flee out complete genocide. They fled from North Carolina all the way up to the Mohawk Nation. And the Mohawk, the Seneca, and the Mohican agreed to allow the Tuscarora to join the Iroquois Confederacy. But they were the Blue Devils, hence Duke's mascot. Yes.
Wow, I had no idea about that. makes me see things a lot more differently now. I already saw how I already had a perspective of how it was with the Redskins and the Cleveland Indians, but I didn't know that they did that also for like the Devils, like the Blue Devils, Red Devils.
It's
So,
crucial to narrative. It was crucial to the narrative in order to
yeah, to
human to
dehumanize
dehumanize
them. Yeah,
us as a population and to villainize us in the language of their Bible, of their European and Middle Eastern beliefs that they've brought to our shore. And so, in that context, it's just part and parcel to the erasing of us, of our dignity, and really of our humanity, to reduce us to just being devils.
yeah, to make people not feel bad when they kill Native Americans. Same
Because
thing
we're
like how they
godless
would
people.
dehumanize Africans when they brought them in as slaves.
Because then they're
Right.
justifying themselves. They're justifying to themselves that they're literally doing the will of God
Yeah.
when they kill us. And so not only is it God blessing them, it's sanctioned, it's what God wants. I mean, God's totally cool with us doing this. God has allowed this. I mean, again, it's just very, very perverse when people try to attribute their evil as glorification of God or anything else. It's very disturbing. But back to the uh, central thesis of this, and that to me is to divorce people from the actual history, because to me the real story of Thanksgiving is the sheer dumb luck of two ships that left England. One left from Southampton, one left from Bristol. One arrived in Plymouth off of Cape Cod, and one arrived in the Chesapeake Bay. Both of those parties that were on those ships managed to find within hours of first landing someone that spoke a European language that could immediately translate for them when hundreds of people showed up with rocks tied to sticks that they're going to beat their brains in with, and lots of bows and arrows. So it was critical for those two different parties, one in Massachusetts, the other one in Virginia, to have someone that could say, hey, 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 I'm speaking to these guys in their own language. They have come in peace. Let's all just be homies. And that's why they weren't immediately killed, because all the other Spanish expeditions in North America failed miserably because they didn't have anyone that spoke Cherokee or
Wow.
Choctaw or anything else. So Spanish expedition after expedition after expedition just failed one after another. Cabeza de Vaca, Panfilo de Narvaez, Hernando de Soto, each one after another, just kept failing because they had no way to talk to any of us. And they just figured with enough men and enough arquebuses and enough horses and dogs and boars that they'll just steamroll over us. But they didn't count on Chief Tuscaloosa and the Alabama tribe. They didn't count on the Nacogdoches tribe being so fierce. They didn't count on the Biloxi people giving them so much hell. Now these places are just names on a map,
Yeah.
but they used to be people and nations and still are.
Yeah, and you can tell by the names also.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
obvious. Like you can tell that
Mississippi.
a Chattanooga, a Chattahoochee, or
Yeah.
Chattahoochee, Chattanooga, that's from our language. That's Cherokee.
Yeah.
Tanasi, Kanadagi, or Kentucky, Tennessee, those are Cherokee terms. Um, to say yes in Cherokee is uh-huh. To say no in Cherokee is uh-uh. Uh-huh,
Still used.
uh-uh. People all across the United States still use uh-huh and uh-uh straight from Cherokee. And they still talk about bucks because, again, the first people speaking English in Virginia that wanted to trade with us to keep from starving to death, they immediately learned uh-huh, uh-uh, and how many bucks? How many bucks is it worth? Okay, that was 1607. 400 freaking years later, people are still referring to bucks. Every lesson that we taught the immigrant, they remembered, and it became part of being American. Because the essence of anything that's truly American is Native American. It mystifies me that people talk about Mexican food as different from Native American food when Mexican food is literally Native American food. It's Aztec food. Go to Spain and you're not going to be having guacamole and all this stuff. It's going to be a paella and tapas,
Yeah.
and it's Spain has a amazing cuisine, but that's Spanish food, not Mexican food, which is Aztec food, a Native American cuisine. And a lot of Americans don't look at tacos and burritos and enchiladas
Did
and all that.
they just
And
added cheese and like what else did they wheat also does
yeah,
that also you're right. They just added
wheat
that.
and cheese.
Yeah.
But
Which is also
the corn tortilla with the chile and the salsa, thousands of years old. The potatoes and the different bean breads and potato breads, right? They've found that in South America, going all the way back to the Tiwanaku settlement off of Lake Titicaca, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
yeah.
Sure, you're familiar with. Um, and of course, you can see that in the multiple constructions across Peru, whether we're talking Machu Picchu or Sacsayhuaman.
Hmm.
You can see, which is in Cusco. You know, you can see the oldest vintage construction are these stones of very irregular shape, and they meet together in the most strange random angles and nooks and crannies, yet you
Yeah.
can't hardly fit a piece of paper between them. And then you go up a little bit and then you'll see now there's kind of like square, more squared looking uniform type blocks on top of that. And then you go up above that and it's kind of, now it looks like shitty brick like everybody's building with these days around town, you know. And you, so you can see the different eras, and you see that all across Peru and where I was at in Ecuador as well, in Cañar and Azuay province. Anyways,
So was there an actual dinner that occurred?
yes, yes. The actual Thanksgiving dinner, as we're taught in school, is a combination of two Thanksgiving dinners. The Thanksgiving dinner that was prepared by the Powhatans for the Jamestown colony, and the dinner that was made for the Pilgrims, that's described by William Bradford. Um, and so, in the case of William Bradford and Squanto, um, literally, when they arrived, they were going about things completely the wrong way. And a lot of the species that they brought just weren't growing. And thus, the first fall was terrible, and they were going into winter facing inevitable starvation and failure as a colony. And Squanto literally summoned help from the Wampanoags, and the deer hunters brought deer and turkey, and they showed them how to make pemmican, which is, you know, you mix nuts and berries and the meat, and you boil out the lard of the meat, and that's what congeals it all together like a jello cake type thing, and you dry it out, and then you can eat that pemmican through the winter. I mean, you know, basically showing them this is what you're going to have to do with the food that we brought today, so it'll last until next spring, keep you from starving to death. So that was the basis of the Plymouth colony celebration. Jamestown colony was a bit more morose because Pocahontas actually discovered the Jamestown colonists digging up their recently buried dead to eat them. And so, in the case of the Jamestown colony, they brought them food and fish and crab and whatnot, and implored them to not eat any more of their brethren, that it's wrong to eat your ancestors. Now, granted, there were other tribes that did practice cannibalism. You know, I mean, the bridge from Brooklyn to Staten Island is called the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, named after the explorer Verrazano, who was lured to shore. I think it was Guadeloupe or Martinique. I don't know. It's over in the Antilles in the Caribbean chain. He was lured to shore, and they actually ate him alive. So there were cannibalistic tribes, but not Pocahontas' tribe, not the Powhatan. Please. stop digging up your people and eating them. And they brought them. It was more of a seafood, kind of like a crab cake baked thing for the Jamestown party. So what we really think of as the first Thanksgiving is basically an embellishment of the William Bradford party at Plymouth Colony in Massachusetts when it came to the cranberries, the turkey, and the deer meat. And really, the only thing that most people don't eat nowadays is the deer meat. Although
Yeah.
I've got deer meat downstairs, and we'll be eating deer meat tomorrow.
Why
Sorry,
do you
Nate.
think that is? Probably because it's
Well, because it's
they
wild.
can't use the deer for agriculture as well as they use like cattle, because you have to actually like hunt them. But with turkey, you can actually like put them in farms. But
Well,
you
it's interesting why they've never really domesticated the deer because, I mean, one of our entire Cherokee clans is the Anikawi, the deer clan, and their job was to literally pen in and domesticate and raise deer
huh?
for making buckskins. Because, the more deer you have, for us, having deer was like a gold reserve because our currency was literally the hide of this very animal, the buckskin. But anyhow, and that's what we wore for our main clothing is the buckskin, right? With the frayed tassels. You know what a buckskin looks like. Anyhow,
Yeah.
and of course the moccasin shoes, um, everything made from deer leather. And so, today I'm gonna say there are some groceries or some butcher shops where you probably can obtain buffalo meat and deer meat, but generally speaking, venison and other wild game is not generally available in American supermarkets. It was quite different when I was in Ecuador, for example, because you'd go to the market, of course, the bottom floor is just nothing but fruits and vegetables, right? And of course, in Latin America, my God, there must be 60 different varieties of different colored fruits of all shapes and sizes that they eat.
Yeah.
There's like 15 different kinds of bananas. Anyways, don't get me started on that. But on the second floor, there would always be like, um, the chicken mongerer and the fish mongerer and the butchers and stuff up on the second floor of the markets. In Ecuador, the health department runs all their markets. And Cuenca, for example, had 6 major markets open 7 days a week. Big deal. And then there was Feria Libre. Anyways, I go up on the second floor, and there would be at the last stall my Quechua homies, always with the feathers and the hair and everything. They got everything. You know what I'm saying? Like literally, they had anaconda there one day. I was like,
What?
anaconda, like the big snake.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I was just like,
Because
it's
they ate everything.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. But they were speaking
But it's probably
Quechua.
nutritious.
Oh yeah, but you could tell because they all have the red, like right underneath their eyes. They have this red in their cheeks and on their foreheads where they like live in the altiplano. I think it's because of the high altitude that they get that. They have this ruddy look. You know what I'm talking
Mm.
about,
Yeah. Yeah.
Franco.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking
Um,
about.
and
And then
and
down south, they probably also have like alligators.
yeah,
Yeah.
caiman. Yeah, crocodile. Yeah,
Yeah. 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 Wow.
caimanes. Because a large part of Ecuador borders Peru down in the Amazon proper at the headwaters of the 2 main forks of the Amazon itself. You know, I, the only time I was in Peru is when we went down to Iquitos, which was actually an old rubber town that can only be accessed within Peru via either you have to fly into the airport or you got to take a boat. There's no way to drive to it. It's because a lot of the stuff in the Amazon, the only way to get around is on boat, like canoe or larger type ship, like a skiff or like a banana type boat. Anyway,
Yeah, I gotta travel more in Peru because most of the times that I've gone was to be in Lima. I've been to Tarapoto, but I have not been to Cusco. I have not been to all these other places in Peru, Ayacucho. And that's just Peru. Like I want to travel to other parts of the Americas too.
it was a
And
culture shock with the whole cuyes, los cuyes, cuy,
oh, Cuy,
cuy,
yeah,
and
yeah.
cuy,
That's also a Quechua word, right? It sounds like
cuy.
one.
Cuy.
Right, the guinea pigs that they eat.
Yeah, the guinea pigs, because the guinea pig is basically the cattle of the Andes.
Yeah.
That's their main livestock, and so they had this really nice mall called Mall de los Rios in Cuenca. What was it? Santa Ana de los Cuatro Rios de Cuenca, because every town in Ecuador has its official name, which is in Spanish, and it's really really long, and it's named after a saint. You know,
Yeah.
and then there's just the common name that everyone calls it. So you have like Santiago de Guayaquil, which literally means Saint James of Guayaquil, but everyone just calls it Guayaquil. Uh, that's the largest city in Ecuador. Down it's their port on the Pacific, but up on top they have these cuys, and so I go in the Mall de los Rios, and they have a pet store, and literally inside the pet store, like I look up and okay, that means livestock, mascotas. Okay,
Yeah.
that's pets. There's literally like a line in the store, and like there's a bunch of animals over on the livestock side, but I'm like, okay, they have a different line than we have up north, because
Yeah.
I had hamsters and guinea pigs as pets, and I never thought of them as plump and delicious. But I digress. Yes, I did. I had the seco de cuy many times with the fried plantain chips and the slice of avocado. And in Ecuador, they always serve it with something called salsa de ají, which is made from the tomate de árbol, which means tree tomato, basically.
Yeah.
And they would mix up it's kind of an orange looking salsa. It's not spicy. It's kind of a Caribbean type flavor. I don't know, because they really, there's different cuisines when you're in Ecuador and Peru, whether you're on
Yeah.
the Altiplano or down on the coast. Because when you're on the
Definitely.
coastline, you get that Creole type seafood. They call it criolla or criolla, whereas up on the Altiplano, you're getting a different cuisine.
It's where ceviche comes from too.
Yeah. Yeah, they had bomb ass ceviche in Guayaquil. Oh my God. But my favorite thing was the watita, which is a particular type of soup, watita.
Hmm.
That they have that in Peru too. Watita. It's made of the menudo, or the what we would call the chitlins. It's made of the tough parts of the stomach of the. It's basically the guts, but
Yeah.
it's something they do to it makes it so good, and it's chopped up real fine. Anyways, it's a different delicacies all around this world. Sorry, I didn't mean
We
to
should
get
we
off.
should have a live stream where we talk about. No, I mean it's related. Thanksgiving is something related. Like we eat. We
Yeah,
so it makes sense we're talking about cuisine. It makes sense we're talking about what Native Americans would eat, north and south, right?
right, right.
But we got to do a live stream also on spirituality of Native Americans and have some other people on like a panel. You'd be down for
That's
that?
awesome. Yeah, I'm down for that. I've actually done I think I've done 5 or 6 episodes with Gene Nolan from the Inspired Network on Native American spirituality on his channel. And each one of those episodes within a day had over 10, 15,000 views. It's an intensely popular series. So I can attest that from having done shows previously about Katua and Cherokee spirituality, that people are genuinely interested in it. And that pleases me to no end, and it's a great honor and privilege to not only be able to speak of the Pequot Nation and to remember them today, and to be remembering them tomorrow as they
Yeah.
remember their loss, but also to bear in mind this fact that the actual date that Thanksgiving is celebrated in the United States today is not the day of the original Thanksgiving Declaration back in 1637, which was in October.
Yeah.
And the date has been moved around several times, even as recently as the 1950s, when they moved it a few times to make the Christmas shopping season longer. And
Wow.
so, what kind of controls when Thanksgiving happens now is the Christmas shopping season. So, I don't know if that's really going to be much of a thing any longer because at this point it seems like the Christmas shopping season had already kind of eclipsed Thanksgiving. Although I would say at this point in our economy in the United States, I don't know how much of a Christmas everyone's going to be buying for. I mean, when
That's
we get to
something.
the end, I'll plug for my how to give Yona money because I don't know how we're going to pull off Christmas,
Yeah.
but we're going to be have a good Christmas season.
Uh,
We'll have
Secret Santas and playing elephant, like that's the way to go. And that's something people need to keep in mind, like what Yona just said there. The people who decide when the holidays are, like the people at the top, let's keep in mind who owns this country. They uh pretty much like worship these days of you spending money and giving money to them. They make that that's what they focus their holidays on, is you buying things, which is kind of a ritual, right?
well,
But
that goes back to Coca Cola when they really crafted the image that we all think of today when we think of Santa Claus wearing the red suit and all of that. I mean, the caricature of today's Santa Claus was created by Coca Cola to sell Coke and commercialism. I mean, a lot of what we consider American culture today is literally a creation from the mind of the nephew of Sigmund Freud, the infamous father of propaganda himself, Edmund Bernays, who basically founded the Madison Avenue advertising industry as we know it today. So, for all you people that hate advertising, you should look into Edmund Bernays. I mean, William Goebbels spoke in glowing admiration of the pioneering work that Edmund Bernays did with the Wilson administration during World War One in the United States. And for those that aren't familiar, uh, Joseph Goebbels was the information minister for the Third Reich, the Nazis during World War II. Anyhow,
people like to tie into what you were saying and to what we were saying earlier about how in the US they ritualize these holidays to be centered around spending. Check
mhm.
out K Reno's song. You can look it up on YouTube. It's K space Rino. That's the name of the artist. And the name of the song is called Grand Deception. Um, but yeah, I can't play it now because then YouTube's gonna be like, oh, like you, same thing that happened to Yona, like oh, like copyright, all this, like you can't play those songs. But yeah, Yona, thanks again for coming on, man. I really appreciate that.
Well, I do have a
And
song. I do have a song that you can use that will not be copyright stricken, as I've now tested it out on 3 different channels. If there was any song I would send people off with from my own catalog recently,
okay,
it would be my song on my YouTube channel. I Remember Everything, which is
I remember
a cover of
everything.
a song done by John Prine. But before we sign off here, I'll give people my infos and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go for sure. Do that.
Okay. Well, let's see. My name, Yona Aniwodi, um, which it's got there, the spelling Yonaniwodi. That just means bear of the red paint clan. It's my Cherokee name. And you can go, for those that only have PayPal, I suppose, if you want to use PayPal, it's Yona Aniwodi at PayPal, although I've kind of walked away from it. Not really doing PayPal anymore, but I still have an account there. But I would prefer if people want to send me money or buy gifts for my babies this Christmas. I got 3. It's Venmo. I have a Venmo tag, Yona Aniwodi, and the other one that my wife set up was Cash App, and it's just a little cash symbol, and then Yona Aniwodi. Of course, I do my shows on Friday nights at 11 p.m. It's called yours truly, Hi Yona with the lower cast, the Peasants Podcast. And we're going to be doing podcast 32 this Friday night. And the general purpose of my show is to give a perspective from the lower caste and recognizing that Each and every nation, each and every people, and every tongue spoken in this world has a lower caste, a working class, and to build more solidarity between all of us working people all across the world in every language they speak. So I try to run an international show of news and music, and all are invited to come by and get fact up with the Yona. Every other week on Friday nights, we're also doing now a Grand Theft World Roundtable with our friends Richard Grove and LD and Tony and the rest from that bunch. Good time, good fun, good fun. And of course, on behalf of my mother's family, Shetag, Sese, Sti, Wejatoligi, protection and prayers and blessings to all.
Well, thank you very much, Yona, and to everyone else. Stay informed. Again, Yona, thanks again for the history lesson, and we should definitely come on back on.
I'm glad
And
we have a Thanksgiving holiday, and it is an excuse for family to come together. The essence
absolutely,
of
yeah, yeah,
family coming together, the essence of sharing food with everyone, that really is to the heart of Native American culture, to sit down and share food and give thanks for companionship and for each other's lives and company. That really is the heart of what it is to be in Indian country and to honor the Great Spirit. I hope we're
absolutely,
all one in love.
yeah, 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 absolutely. Take care, everyone. Make sure you give thanks.
Love you all.